Hello everybody, welcome to MediChat. In this video, we are going to understand the difference between two enzymes, hexokinase and glucokinase. Before we understand the difference between the enzymes, let's understand the function because the function of both the enzymes is the same. Hexo means a 6-carbon molecule. Gluco is a 6-carbon molecule. Kinase, which is the common suffix, basically adds a phosphate group to our molecule. So both hexokinase and glucokinase add a phosphate group to our glucose. Okay. So now if they are performing the same function, why do we have two separate names? What differs? So while they perform the same function, they have a subtle difference. And let's understand what this difference is with the help of an analogy, because this is a very important and a high-yield topic for exams. Let us consider the story of a village. Now this village, it has houses where civilians live and it has a palace. And this is a very special village. What is so special about this village? So this village regularly has rainfall. But the rainfall is not water rain. The rain actually is glucose rain. Glucose is your grocery. So when it's raining, it's actually raining with glucose. So this is glucose rain. Now you notice every house has a person standing outside the door. Who is this person? This person is the guard of the house. So we call him the house guard. So he is the house guard. House guard, H for hexokinase. So here we are talking about hexokinase, who is the house guard. What is the function of this house guard? This house guard has to take this glucose molecule from the glucose rain, store it in the house. But the problem is, because the door of the house is so small, it's easy to move glucose in and it's also easy to lose glucose out of the door. So our house guards are very smart. They take glucose in. Once it goes in, they add a phosphate group to it. Phosphate group is very bulky. So it makes the glucose molecule very big. And now this cannot leave the house because the door size is now small. So glucose 6-phosphate gets trapped inside the house. So the house guard is associated with the function of storing and completely filling the house with glucose 6-phosphate. What is the function of glucose 6-phosphate? So once it enters and it forms glucose 6-phosphate, this glucose 6-phosphate will then undergo glycolysis. Glycolysis is a process where we take in food, which is glucose, and we break it down to form energy. So this house will get filled with glucose 6-phosphate and glucose 6-phosphate will undergo glycolysis. Glycolysis will give it energy, which is ATP. With ATP, this house will be able to perform all the functions. Got it? So again, hexokinase is the house guard. Hexokinase will take glucose in and it will store glucose as glucose 6-phosphate. And this glucose 6-phosphate will be broken down to get energy. And with this energy, the house will perform all of its function. Now what exactly is the house here? The house basically symbolizes cells. So all these cells of the body have house guards, which are your hexokinase, which take glucose in, convert it into glucose 6-phosphate, store the glucose 6-phosphate within them, and this glucose 6-phosphate will undergo glycolysis. And glycolysis will give the cell energy to perform its function. That's why we need hexokinase. All cells in our body have hexokinase except for 2 cells, and I'm going to emphasize on this point a little later. So if I have a house guard, why do I need glucokinase? So now to answer that question, this village sometimes gets lucky. And when it's lucky, it has good luck. So that's when the good luck rain happens. So when it's raining with good luck, that means there is a lot of grocery falling. There is a lot of glucose falling. So this is the good luck rain, which I am symbolizing with the color yellow. Good luck rain. So why did I call it good luck rain? Because G and LUC, which means good luck rain, glucokinase. G for good, LUC luck. So glucokinase will be functional when good luck rain occurs. What is good luck rain? Good luck rain is nothing but when there is too much glucose. These houses get saturated with glucose 6-phosphate. There is no space for glucose 6-phosphate to be stored. So now these house guards are not functional. Why? Because they say, my God, I have no space. I have occupied all the little tiny crevices that I could fill up. Everything is filled up with glucose 6-phosphate. There is no space to fill up with glucose 6-phosphate. I am fully saturated with glucose 6-phosphate. So the house guards cannot accommodate the extra glucose that is coming through the good luck rain. That's when we have our good luck guards coming into picture. So what are these good luck guards? So these are our good luck guards, which is nothing but G for good, LUC luck, glucokinase. What does glucokinase do? Glucokinase will take this extra glucose, which could not be stored in the house, and it will take it into the palace, and it will make glucose 6-phosphate and store it in the palace of the village. So why do we store it in the palace of the village? So you would say that, okay, if we have too much glucose falling, if there is good luck rain, let it fall and let it get wasted. Why am I actually taking the effort of storing all of this good luck rain or glucose into the palace? Because there can be a situation where there is a drought in the village. A drought in the village means there is no glucose rain. When there is no glucose available, all the glucose 6-phosphate in the house will be utilized. And that's when the excess glucose from the good luck rain can be provided to these houses or the cells. And they can perform their daily function by making ATP with the excess glucose that was stored in the palace. Hence, it is essential to have our good luck guards, which is nothing but glucokinase, who can store the extra glucose within the palace, and this palace will then act as a reservoir to give these houses glucose when there is a drought situation, when the glucose rain is absent. So now we understand glucokinase and hexokinase. Hexokinase is present in all the houses. It is the house guard. Hexokinase, house guard. So hexokinase is present in all the houses. Whatever glucose comes, the hexokinase will be active and it will constantly keep storing glucose 6-phosphate in the house. When the house is saturated and has no space for more glucose 6-phosphate, our good luck guards, which is your glucokinase, will come into the picture, and it will store the extra glucose into the palace for future use. So now we understand the difference between hexokinase and glucokinase. We said that hexokinase is there in all cells of the body except 2. The except 2 are the cells that use glucokinase. So glucokinase using cells are basically the palace. So what is the palace? So our palace is basically liver, and beta cells of pancreas. So I'm assuming that with this analogy, we've all understood what the difference it is between hexokinase and glucokinase. Now let's dive into the technicalities to understand the differences and to solidify what is actually needed in the exam. So again, a review. Hexokinase, H, so this is our house guard. House guard meaning it is there in all cells of the body. All cells except liver, beta cells of pancreas. Glucokinase, GLUC, good luck guards. So good luck guards will store good luck rain. Good luck rain meaning the extra glucose that is coming will be stored by the good luck guards. It is stored in the liver and beta cells of pancreas. So we need to understand what Km and Vm is. Km basically tells us the affinity for glucose, and Vm will tell us the capacity for glucose. Now we saw that hexokinase will be functional even with minimal amount of glucose. Even if there is minimal rain, all of the house guards will be running and taking all the glucose as much as possible and storing it into the house as glucose 6-phosphate. So hexokinase has a very high affinity for glucose, whereas glucokinase, which is your good luck guards, will be active only when there is ample of glucose, such that there is no space in your houses to store glucose. So their affinity is very low because they will be active only when there's too much glucose, right? So let's write that. High affinity for glucose with hexokinase, low affinity for glucose with glucokinase. So when I'm saying the affinity is high, affinity is inversely proportional to Km, which means Km value will be low for hexokinase and Km value will be high for glucokinase because affinity is inversely proportional to Km. Next, I spoke about Vm. This basically means capacity for glucose. So glucokinase basically stored it in a palace, whereas hexokinase stored it in small houses. So therefore capacity for glucose will be low in hexokinase and more in glucokinase. So let's write that down. Low capacity, high capacity. Just like affinity was inversely proportional to Km, similarly capacity is inversely proportional to Vm. So if the capacity is low for hexokinase, that means Vm will be high. And if the capacity is high for glucokinase, that means Vm will be low. Now, what inhibits these enzymes? So hexokinase is inhibited when there is too much glucose 6-phosphate such that your houses are full, correct? As the analogy stated, if the house is fully occupied with glucose 6-phosphate, hexokinase will get inhibited and it will stimulate your glucokinase. So when your houses are saturated, hexokinase is inhibited because glucose 6-phosphate has completely occupied the house. Hence, glucose 6-phosphate inhibits your hexokinase. Now let's talk about glucokinase. So glucokinase is actually inhibited by fructose 6 phosphate. Now you may ask why. So fructose 6 phosphate basically helps bind glucokinase with glucokinase related peptide, which inhibits your glucokinase activity. But a very smart question here would be that when my houses are full and fully saturated, which means glycolysis is saturated, and if glycolysis is saturated, you have too much fructose 6 phosphate, which is going to inhibit your glucokinase. But when my glycolysis is saturated is where I need to activate my glucokinase, right? So that my excess glucose can be stored in the liver. But if there is too much fructose 6 phosphate, it is inhibiting glucokinase. So this doesn't make sense. That's why there is a catch to this. Although fructose 6 phosphate will inhibit your glucokinase, this inhibition can be overcome by glucose, because when there is too much glucose rain or there is good luck rain, that's when we need to activate glucokinase. So the inhibition by fructose 6 phosphate will be overcome by glucose such that it activates your glucokinase. So that is an important point to be kept in mind. Inhibition can be overcome by glucose. So that's the video on hexokinase and glucokinase. I hope this video was helpful in understanding this concept, and I hope the analogy made it easier. The technicalities are also easy to understand now. That's all we have for today. Happy learning. Thank you.